Hi again. This is Uncle Aaroh with the Playwright Head. Today we will be talking about how we can do contract testing in Playwright using Zod. So let's get started. So when do you need to do contract testing? Well, if you have got two teams, team 1 and team 2, who are working on the same project, and team 1 is maintaining the API and team 2 is consuming the API, you will need to keep track of the changes because team 1 has its own change cycle and team 2 has their own change cycle. So if team 1 is making continuous changes, that means there could be some breaking changes, and breaking changes means that the production system, which is the front end system maybe, or whatever the system that is the consumer, could go down and could cause a major production issue, which can cause brand reputation damage. It could impact your customers. There could be a lot of implications, and there's a high risk involved. And whenever there is a risk, we write tests to guard against that risk. So team one is making changes, but do we need to, does the team one need to talk to team two for all the changes that they are making? No, only the breaking changes. So how does team one know what are the breaking changes for team two, and how does team two know that team one has made a breaking change? Well, this is where the contract testing comes in. Contract testing basically is a way of creating a schema and then validating that schema. So this schema that we will create, which is a contract, this is an accepted schema by the consumer system, and this is the accepted schema by the API. Now, who accepts this schema? This is where humans step in. So this is where human come in, and then they communicate with each other and say that yes, we have got an API, and this API will always return, for example, slots as an array. But for example, in future, team one decides that slot doesn't need to be an array because we always return one slot. They make it an object. This could break system on the left hand side, which is the consumer system. So the contract test will stop that change as soon as that change is made. Then both teams will need to update the contract, approve the contract, and the changes need to be made on both systems. So this system will be updated to accept that kind of change, and this system will be updated to basically make that kind of change. So that is how we do contract testing. I will now show you how we can do this in Playwright. To implement this in Playwright, what I've done is I've created an example with three folders. So we have got contracts, dummy API, and Playwright tutorial. Contracts is where I've written the contract. Let's assume that the team 1 and team 2 have a shared repository and it's called contracts, and this is where they maintain the contract. So this is what my contract looks like. I'm going to go through it in detail in a bit. But before that, I want you to look at the response from a dummy API. So my dummy API is running on localhost 3000. I'm going to go to the API slot, which gives me the response with ID, this, and then slot. So you can see the slot is an array over here, and it contains ID, start time, end time. So let's look at the contract. So just for the slot ID, start time, end time. So slot, this is my slot schema. It has got ID, start time, end time. This slot is an array. So this is an array. It contains an object. So after that, it's an object. So this is written in Zod. So an array containing an object, and the object contains ID, start time, end time, and ID is a UID, and then start time and end time is basically date time. Now this is contained within another object. So this is the parent object, and it contains ID and slot. So this is the whole object appointment schema, and it has got ID and slot. So we have got ID, which is UID, and slot schema is the schema that we have created over there. So this is my contract. Now, how do I use this contract within Playwright? Let's have a look at that. So this is my Playwright test. So I've created a test, and you're already familiar with the import statement. The second import is the schema. This is a Zod schema that we created in the contracts folder. This Zod schema, now if we take a look at it, how we are going to use it is appointment schema is something that we parse in the end. and we are using this to do an expect. So I'm going to show you the expect in a bit. So before that, if we look at the request, so I'm going to make a request to the API, go to the page, make a request, which is the request for the API slot. I'm going to copy the response and get the response in JSON. So let's just print out the response first. So console.log response.body. I'm gonna comment out this and let's run the test. Npx playwright test. So we can see that we are able to fetch the response correctly using playwright. Now comes the expect statement. So in the expect, what I'm going to do is I'm going to parse the appointment schema, and I'm going to expect this to not throw an error. So dot, just give me 1 second. So I'm gonna look at the Playwright API assertions not throw. Let's just search it. Not throw error. So this is a very good example to throw error, and you can just do a not over there. So I'm going to copy this expect. So if the schema doesn't match, Zod will throw an error. And here I can do not. Now let's try to run this test again. So this passes. Nothing changed, right? Now let's try changing something. So imagine I am team 2 and I'm making changes to the API. So this is my API. Previously we were returning the array of slots. Now I'm saying that because we always return one slot, why do we need an array? So let's make a change. So I'm going to go and show it to you in the browser. So we had this square bracket over here. If I open this again, we don't have this square bracket anymore. So I'm going to run this test, and the test fails. Oh my god. So it says expected an array, received an object. What will happen? Now both teams will talk to each other and they will say, hey, you were gonna send us an array, but you're now sending us an object. We need to talk. And then both team will update their systems and then agree on the contract, and then they will make a change to the contract. So I'm going to go and make a change to the contract because now we expect it to be an object directly. So I'm going to get rid of the array bit. There you go. And this change is now approved. The PR is merged. Contract has been updated. Now we will rerun this test. And there you go. The test is passing. And the reason why you're seeing this is because of my console log inside the test. So if I go here and remove this console.log that I added for my own debugging purpose, you will just see the test pass statement. So that's how you do contract testing in Playwright. Isn't that fun? Keep watching and don't forget to subscribe.